every central bank is stacking so fiercely shows us that they're gearing up for this reset coming up in October. We don't know what the value will be, but there are people that are throwing out numbers, people digging in, and they'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth as U.S. loses its grip on the dollar. My final thoughts are that we all need to just pay attention to what the central banks are doing. Keep your eyes on anything that isn't praised by Western media sources, and be kind to one another.
The BRICS nations are actively exploring a new currency called the unit, reportedly backed by gold. Alongside this, they are developing a global payment system, which is seen as a challenge to the dominance of the US dollar. Significant developments regarding these initiatives are anticipated at the upcoming 14th Annual BRICS Summit in Kazan, Russia, scheduled for October. These nations are not only working on a common currency, but are also making strides to reduce their reliance on the dollar. Member countries are formalizing trade agreements in their own currencies and have been purchasing gold at unprecedented levels while decreasing their dollar reserves. According to the IMF, dollar reserves held by central banks have dipped to just over 58%, the lowest in 25 years. The upcoming BRICS meeting is viewed as a pivotal moment in the evolving landscape of the global monetary system, signaling a potential shift. Historically, global monetary resets occur approximately every 150 years, and recent trends suggest we may be nearing another significant transition. To provide insights into what this could entail based on past currency resets, we turn to historian and journalist John Forrest Little, founder of the Silver Academy, a research initiative focused on silver's industrial and monetary roles. Little breaks down the history of global reserve currency cycles and weighs in on the accelerating trend of de-dollarization. He warns that the next phase of the global monetary reset is fast approaching, emphasizing the importance of understanding these historical patterns as the landscape of international finance evolves. The new BRICS currency, known as the unit, is one of the key projects being showcased. Its structure ties 40% of its value to the price of gold, while the remaining 60% is linked to a basket of the national currencies of BRICS countries. John Forrest estimates that if we backed our money supply with gold at this ratio, the value of gold could reach approximately $53,000 an ounce. As we dive into the video, remember to subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. We value your thoughts, so drop a comment below and give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the content.
Let me just interject one thing, because I picked it up in the thread you just said, that one distinction, however, with China and let's say India is they actually tell their people to stack gold and silver. They do it. Because any regime that's been stung in the past understands that during the tough times, gold steps up. So that's big distinction in the West. You just won't, if you were to just go to a Target or a mall and talk to 100 randos, none of them would say they don't know anything about gold because there's been a media blackout here in the US. Now, getting back to your question of what to look for with this, the unit. The way I'm going based on how it's being advertised, because until then, I can go with nothing else. But we know they tested a transaction 2 or 3 business days ago with a purchase outside the US dollar, a UAE transaction, buying oil through this minimal viable product, which is the unit system, the unified new international trade. They're calling MBRIDGE. It's set up through, if you download the white paper, it's set up through the Bank of International Settlements, BIS. So it's, is it a CBDC? Kind of, but everything's digital. But it's, again, 40% backed by gold is a pretty hefty. If we did a system that was similar, 40% backed by gold, that's the Jim Rickards formula. He sets gold at $27,000 an ounce if we back him to money supply, 40% gold. If you do it all, he has the number north of $53,000. So I think it's...
If we do, you mean a full currency based on the...
Yeah, all of our, yes, the full money supply backed by what we say is our 8,000 tons of gold equals 263 million ounces, troy ounces. You just do the simple division and you're at $53,000 an ounce. I think one mistake many gold enthusiasts make is thinking that BRICS is going to save them. But the short-sighted side of that mindset or paradigm is that the world outside would look pretty ugly if everybody signed into their brokerage accounts and saw that their pension funds and their 401ks and their IRAs and their other things that are part of the financialized system of the West are being attacked, which is the broader question of economic warfare. And what you brought up about the BRICS not necessarily getting along is very astute, Michelle, because there is a profound history of nations not trusting each other. However, they do trust gold. And, a lot of people would say, well, the problem with just using gold is the speed of gold. Gold is the most liquid of all the assets out there. But since we do most trade through our computers, this Enbridge and Unit are just sort of intermediaries. And it is in a testing phase. And, the jury is still out on whether it'll work. But one thing we can all agree on is in the eyes of the world, the U.S. has sort of overstayed their welcome or have had their day in the sun. And then, like we talked about earlier, when you abuse that privilege, there are a gang of countries trying to say we've had enough. So, we can all start being skeptical of it. And that's what I'm hearing in your voice right now. And I share that skepticism, but it doesn't mean it is upon us, and it was tested out. And there will be always creative ways to work around something. And that's why sanctions never work, because they usually that's why we say we shoot ourselves in the foot, or it's a self-inflicted wound, because people figure an end around, which usually ends up punishing the person that is trying to inflict the pain.
Gold is on track for its best return since 2010, outpacing even 2020's 25.1% gain as the COVID-19 pandemic accelerated doomsday investment bets. The volume of global central bank purchases of gold have tripled since Russia invaded Ukraine in early 2022, according to Goldman Sachs, which also named concerns over climbing U.S. federal debt and the potential for increased institutional capital into gold exchange-traded funds, ETFs, as a driver of higher gold prices. According to John Forrest Little, he believes that, philosophically, gold has played a critical role throughout history. He observed that since around the year 500, whenever a regime falters and another rises, gold and silver step in to account for misallocations, wars, and other corruptions. In this transformative moment, he emphasizes the importance of monitoring central bank actions and remaining skeptical of narratives promoted by Western media. Now, let's delve into the video.
Philosophically, the gold, we started the broadcast showing the various regimes throughout since the year 500. Every time one dips and another emerges, gold and silver step up to do the accounting for misallocations, evil wars, misjudgments in, or let's just say from revolution to revolution, there's always some sort of misallocation or theft or corruptness or greed. So if I were to stick with that pattern in history, then I'm going to go with just taking debt and dividing the debt from whatever the real count of gold is above ground. So people just need to do their own research of what debt's around 35 trillion and divide that by how many ounces of gold there are. And then you're pretty much going to get a gold target price. I think once gold was deemed a tier one asset, people knew it innately, because I think people understand that when you say intrinsic value, you mean this gold and its physical properties, its ductility, its malleability, the fact that you can take an ounce of gold and pound on it, and it can be 300 square feet foil, which we call gold leaf, that's been used recently to even coat satellites, and under laser attack, it gets stronger. It's the only material ever under laser attack that gets stronger, not disintegrates. So it just has so much utility, as does silver, because of its physical properties. So people understand that, not and that it's been money since, well, some people say 3,000 years, but at least I can document since the first coins were minted. They're rushing to safe havens, but it's just that's one side of it. The other side of it is they're using it as a hedge against being sanctioned. And the fact that every central bank is stacking so fiercely shows us that they're gearing up for this reset coming up in October. We don't know what the value will be, but there are people that are throwing out numbers, and we can figure out. There are formulas that are even being tossed around by Jim Rickards and Lynette Zhang and Judy Shelton, and I'll be happy to share those numbers with you too and how they arrive at their calculations. But yeah, it's really a big shift, and like you said earlier in the segment, no one knows. Let's say Mount Vesuvius is supposed to erupt every 300 years. Well, the people in Pompeii didn't think it would be them.
Right.
I think that's sort of what you meant by the recency bias. I like the way you said that. My final thoughts are that we all need to just pay attention to what the central banks are doing. Keep your eyes on anything that isn't praised by Western media sources, and be kind to one another.
Nations across the globe are actively seeking alternatives to the US dollar. For instance, China and Russia have begun trading in their own currencies, while countries like India, Kenya, and Malaysia are advocating for de-dollarization or entering agreements to trade using local currencies or alternative benchmarks. Gold remains near all-time highs, influenced by a weakened US dollar, uncertain global economic conditions, and rising geopolitical tensions. The rally shows no signs of slowing, especially as upcoming central bank decisions may further increase demand. This raises the question, who determined that the dollar would be the primary trade currency following the end of gold parity? Share your feedback in the comments below. If you found this video useful, hit the thumbs up and subscribe to keep up with our latest updates. We appreciate you being a part of this journey.